Good morning, this is Brandy.
Good morning, Brandy. This is Brad Reese. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We'll just be getting started here in a few minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Don't eat watermelon and drive.
All right, Blair, you can get started whenever you would like.
He's having a conversation.
She's going to be a few minutes late. But she said to start without her.
All right, it is, looks like 9:04, and I will call this meeting to order of the Water Wastewater Facility Operator Certification Board. Let's start with introductions, and maybe we'll start with Gary on introductions.
Gary Marshall, retired.
Josh Meck, City of Boulder.
Alan Coyne, ACDC Waterworks.
Ron Falco with the State Health Department.
Robbie Darcy, Town of Basalt.
Blair Corning, South Platte Water Renewal Partners.
Eric Hassel, Purgatory Metro District.
Shelley Stanley, City of Northglenn.
Annette Quill with the Attorney General's Office.
Brandy Valdez Murphy, Administrator for the Board.
And this is Lance. I'm on the phone.
That's Lance on the phone. Yeah. Sure. Anyone else on the phone would like to introduce themselves?
Yeah, this is Brad Reese, looking for Reciprocity.
And Steve Harper, Colorado Rural Water Association.
This is Nancy Moran with the division.
That's weird.
No, it wouldn't turn on. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
This is Nancy Horan with the division.
Sherry Skajari, City of Aurora.
Larissa Orendorf, CCWP.
Vanessa Roy, CCWP.
Armando Harold with the Water Quality Control Division.
All right, thank you, everybody. Let's get started with approval of the agenda. Do we need a motion for approval of the agenda?
I actually have two items that I'm going to add to the agenda
All
today.
right, what do you got?
Under number 5, the administrator items, we are adding the request from Brad Reese for Reciprocity.
Okay.
And then under item number 7, the division liaison report, we will have an additional portal update.
Oh, good. All right. Is everyone all right with that? Usually we don't approve it, right? No. Anybody else got any additions? All right. Let's go with opportunity for public comment. I think that's where we're at. So would anybody, there's not too many of the actual public out there. Does any of the public have a comment on items that aren't coming up in the agenda? No? All right. Well, we'll see most of you later. Administrators items. Let's move on to that.
All right. Those are your minutes from the May 28th, 2019 meeting.
Make a motion.
I'll second.
All right. Alan has moved and Shelley has seconded to approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the minutes pass.
And then I have the tentative agendas for both the August 26th training session and the August 27th board meeting.
Time you gonna try and start that meeting on the 26th?
I believe it is scheduled for noon, but let me verify that.
That's what I just saw. And I may be, oh goody.
Our youngest member has just arrived.
I'm going to do my best to get here on time for the training, but I may have a tiny little conflict.
Okay, I will just warn you all that the best practices training for boards and commissions is a required training. So if you don't attend on the 26th, you'll have to come in for special training individually.
I have an appointment in Greeley at 10.
Ah,
So I should be able to be out of Greeley by 11, which could put me here noon 15-ish.
okay.
Sorry, mate.
All right, are there any other comments on the training outline or the agenda for our upcoming meeting? Seemed like there's a lot packed into that training outline. I don't know if we can program any song or dance numbers or some kind of fun. It looks pretty, it looks like a full day there.
It's definitely a full afternoon.
And that's noon to 5 or
I would hope we'd be done around 3 or 4 at the latest. I won't keep you here until 5.
If you need a motion, I'll move it.
All right, it's been moved to approve the tentative agenda for training and the upcoming meeting. Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Lance, are you opposed or are you just late there?
No, I was just a little late though.
All right, good.
There's a delay.
I didn't think you'd take a stand on this one here.
There's a delay when you're on the other end.
Oh. I better turn this back over to the pro here.
Well, thanks guys for filling in for me. Perfect. All right, so motion carries. For the agenda, we've got an amendment to the agenda and we're going to discuss Brad Reese now.
Mhm.
Great.
he's on the phone.
Hi, Brad.
Good morning. Thank you all for hearing me. I don't know if you guys have my letter of reciprocity request.
We do.
You or not, but I can go ahead and read it to you guys. More or less is I'm a certified Class A water operator in the state of Illinois, and I was going to apply back in 2018, but unfortunately my son was born at 26 weeks, 3 months premature, and I was unable to apply back then. I reached out to the state April, May of this year in regards to applying for reciprocity, but now the state of Colorado doesn't accept Illinois as a qualifying state due to their testing process. So I'm asking for an exception due to my personal circumstances. I know it's you guys have made rules for a reason. I'm not trying to break your rules. I'm just trying to ask for an exception. So I can read you guys my letter if you'd like.
We actually have it pulled up here. I think we've all looked at it and read it, and we appreciate you writing it and being on the phone with us this morning. Nancy, maybe you have something to add here?
I don't know if the board has any kind of a precedent for making an exception to a policy. I know that I'm very sympathetic to people that have extenuating circumstances. This policy was adopted. The revisions to this policy that impact Mr. Reese were adopted in June of 2018. So I'm not sure exactly when his son was born, but it's possible that when he wanted to apply last year that this policy would already have been in effect. I did contact Illinois just to verify that the information they had sent us, which caused Illinois not to be on Colorado's list of approved programs, to see if there had been any misunderstanding or and in fact, Illinois writes its own exam questions. The exam questions are reviewed by their subject matter experts as opposed to professional psychometricians. The board's policy requires that the exam be validated by psychometricians. That's actually written in the policy. Illinois does not give sequential exams. They do give cumulative exams. So their lowest level exam has 100 questions, but then as you move up, there are additional questions. So at the C or the 2 level, there would be 150 questions. And then for B and A exams, they have 200 questions. So whereas ABC sequential exams, they're not cumulative. The higher level exams don't repeat what was in the lower exams. In Illinois, they do try to make an effort to do so. But based on the board's policy, Illinois is not an approved program. And as far as making an exception, I think the board would need to consider the ramifications of that action and the precedent that might set.
Thanks, Nancy. Would we like to entertain a motion or perhaps have more discussion?
I guess I feel like since there's 2 strikes against, they write their own tests. They don't use an ABC exam, we were pretty firm on that. And they're not sequential. I'm not as stuck on the sequential as I am the ABC exam. So, unfortunately, I would probably oppose reciprocity and just say, you take the exams in Colorado. That's by no way a motion.
Why not?
Because
Larissa, did you have anything to add?
I had the chance to talk with Mr. Reese on the phone, and I don't know much about his experience, but I know that he's really passionate about the field, and he's excited to be here in Colorado, and they've already made the move. And he's expressed that this is going to be home. So I like to see all of our operators succeed, and I know he's going to be able to do that, taking the exams, or if it's the board's pleasure to grant reciprocity. I think that we talked to a lot of operators every day, and I could tell that he was really genuine, and he just wants to get busy and get to work. It's the impression that I got.
Thank you, Larissa.
I guess from a legal perspective, what are our options? We say yes, we say no, or can we grant a lesser license than the one he's requesting?
I think all 3 of those are options. And, the policy, it's not binding. And, of course, you have the ability to make exceptions. Just keep in mind the precedent that you set. But yes, it's also an option to grant a lower level as well.
Now, if you make exceptions to the policy, then you really don't have a policy, is my viewpoint on it. And we worked long and hard to contact all of the state agencies, get their requirements, make sure that our program was sufficient for Colorado's needs. And I think we need to live with our policies that we've enacted.
Also, one of the things that we discussed at length, I felt, was the fairness to the Colorado operators, that have to go through this process. And I believe that we need to stick to that.
Yeah, I think in looking at the material, it seems like he went through the same thing as a Colorado operator. He took the test sequentially, whether that's required or not. It sounded like he did. The tests are 100 questions or more, and they're administered by the state, which requires you to be certified. So I think they're not ABC if that's our big, if that's our requirement. Otherwise, it seems like, if we can get a good high-level operator in the state, maybe we should work around I think we knew this was going to come up when we set that policy, and I think it'll get easier as we go. But I'm not sure that, I think that in my mind, it doesn't really have anything to do with the old policy, because if, the old contractor reviewed it, there's no saying that they would have granted an A at that time. So I don't think it's a matter of I didn't apply then, I should, that was then, this is now. But I think I would be inclined to say maybe, we grant a C and say, clearly he could probably pass the test if he's an A in Illinois, but I guess that would be one option.
And that's kind of where I'm hung up, is in the past, the contractor would review the testing, the experience, and all of that, and, figure out if this individual was qualified to be an A, B, C, or D level. And so where does that fall into the policy? It doesn't really. However, I know we've discussed that procedure, and moving in with the new contractor, it's relatively unclear how we could potentially keep going with that type of analysis, if we can at all. And so maybe this is a great opportunity to have that conversation with the contractor. Please.
So one thing that is built into our current process is that if an operator is from a state that is not granted reciprocity based on the criteria and in the policy, an operator doesn't even have an opportunity to apply and be rejected. I understand why, because we live and die by the policy. However, I think that because of that, the contractor, as we stand, we don't really have in our process a way to do that, to evaluate somebody who it's like a yes or no, and there's no gray, and that's clean. And me, I like that. I like having an answer. However, when it's a human on the other end of things who is eager and who could be an asset to what we do, I have a hard time with not even allowing that person the opportunity to apply and be told no, and to be able to appeal. He was, after talking with Nancy, she made it possible so that there was light on this situation, and that Mr. Reese could be here talking with us today. But if we would have followed our programmatic steps, this conversation technically really shouldn't have even happened. He should have just got the no and not even been able to apply.
Well,
The way the software was designed.
and that, I guess, to me, is where I'm a little wishy-washy, in that other folks that may have the same type of experience, if they didn't go that extra step to contact the program office or Nancy or anybody, and really, put some effort into writing a letter and attempting to contact us as a board, would they even get heard? So while I want to make the process fair to everybody, I don't know how that would look if the contractor can look into certain cases more, if requested? I mean, would that automatically put that whole other group of people who don't go the extra mile to check in just completely out? You know, would they just get that no and start over? This is difficult because, you know, we set policies, and I think it's important to follow the rules, right? But at the same time, like you said, we don't want to push people away unduly.
I mean, and this sounds like a bigger discussion, obviously, than just this case, because it seems like, I mean, I could definitely see this happening a lot. You know, so maybe you all want to revisit your policy and put some wiggle room in there for the board to, you know, make not even, I wouldn't even say exceptions, just case by case determinations. But then obviously the process itself on the contractor's end needs to reflect that and give the opportunity for that. So we'd have to talk about what that looks like going forward. But, you know, I think you have the authority, and so it's up to you how you want to exercise that going forward.
Brad, can I ask you a question? This is Alan from the board. When you say you did do a D exam, did you also do the C and B separately, or am I kind of missing something here? You say on your letter, I did take the D exam separately from my ABC. Were those a combined, or were they just a single at each time? Brad?
What I understood from them was that they were combined.
Brad, did you hear Alan's question?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't.
All right.
Brad, did you take, I see you said you took the exam D separately, but was the ABC part combined? I'm just trying to make sure that's right.
I'm sorry, I can't hear anything if you guys are trying to ask me something.
Alan, the letter from the state of Illinois says he took a D exam and he took an A exam. Okay. It makes no mention of a B or a C exam.
Okay. So the way that the state of Illinois works is when you take the A exam, it has the B and the C questions on the A exam as well.
Here.
Did you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. So you took you took the D and then a combined ABC.
Correct.
Okay.
But I took each individual class separately. It's just the tests are combined.
Does Illinois have reciprocity with us?
No, they do not. And I think their requirement is any state that doesn't accept Illinois, they don't accept back. So.
Sound science. That's easy.
Do we know anything about how difficult their exams are, or what their pass-fail rate is?
No. So we could request pass rates, but that's not going to necessarily tell us how difficult the test questions are. And if Illinois were to ask ABC for a copy of their exam to evaluate the difficulty, ABC would say no, because that gets into undermining the integrity of the test.
So I kind of find ourselves sitting here doing something that the previous contractor would have done. They would have looked into all of these things and made an evaluation or determination as to whether we wanted to, or they would recommend if we awarded this individual reciprocity at an A, B, C, or D level. One thing that I think this board should not do on a routine basis is just that. If we wanted to attempt to have more discussions with the contractor to see how well they would be able to field some of these and do a more thorough analysis, I think that I personally would be in favor of doing that. Or at least having the discussion to figure out how we can do that, if it's feasible or not. In terms of this particular case of Brad, I'm not sure that we have all the information in order to make a determination for any other license or any other recommendation, right? We have our policy, which states that we accept certain states and we don't accept others.
So the policy establishes the criteria for what constitutes a Colorado comparable exam. I don't think anyone has any issues whatsoever with this operator's experience. And so the question is, does Illinois give a Colorado comparable exam? And based on the criteria in the policy, it does not. This board could determine that Illinois does give a Colorado comparable exam, in which case any applicants from Illinois would be acceptable. But it seems that the truly difficult part of making reciprocity decisions is the exam. We require operators in Colorado to take ABC exams and to take them sequentially. That's any operator in Colorado has to do that. When an operator is coming from another state, the tricky part is determining whether that exam that they took or the exams that they took are comparable to what we require Colorado's operators to do. And that's why the policy that you guys have adopted explains the criteria. This describes the exams that are taken in Colorado. This is, what we require of our operators. And that says nothing about the competency of operators from other states whatsoever. It's not a question about whether they would be good operators. I think that Brad probably would be an outstanding operator, and I hope that if he doesn't get reciprocity, that he will go through the exam process here in Colorado, which he will now be able to do relatively quickly. And I would love to see him, based on the amount of experience that he has, he can just take one exam after another and get up to that high level reasonably quickly. But I think that the board might consider carefully making an exception for this one operator based on anything other than the exam. And if the exam is acceptable, then I would recommend that the board request that Illinois' exams, that the state of Illinois be added to the list of acceptable programs, rather than make an exception for this operator. I would ask that be the determining factor rather than the individual.
Which, if we did that, there wouldn't be any reason to let any state be accepted.
Illinois' exam falls short in that it's not an ABC exam and they don't give their exam sequentially. However, the board could consider that Illinois gives exams that have increasing number of questions for the higher levels. And the board could consider that under those circumstances, and perhaps the board needs more information from Illinois about the content of those exams. Those questions are not validated. The questions, we have no way of knowing the difficulty of those questions, whether the questions themselves are comparable to ABC. I'm not quite sure how to get that information when Illinois writes its own questions and may not provide us a list of those questions to evaluate. But just because it's not an ABC exam, if the board thinks that the number of questions and the fact that they're cumulative exams, if the board thinks that that's sufficient to qualify as a Colorado comparable exam, it does not meet the criteria in the policy, in the board's policy. But if the board wanted to determine that Illinois gives a Colorado comparable exam, then it seems to me that would be perhaps a better decision than to make an exception for an individual operator.
I'm not sure we have the information to make that determination. I can recall Jackie working for, and you, working for months to collect that information from all 50 states and territories. And I don't think as a board, we should just ignore that.
Yeah, I think either way, we set a precedent that could turn into dominoes that open the door for a lot more of this. I don't know. It's a tough one.
I agree. I think that our staff has worked extremely hard in trying to get all the information that we can possibly obtain in a short period to write this policy. And I'm of the opinion that we should follow the policy, but perhaps begin another conversation with the contractor to determine a feasible means for cases such as this, to perhaps provide a way for them to be evaluated more thoroughly and for the contractor to potentially recommend lower levels or levels that they have requested based on X, Y, and Z.
Gabby, this is Steve Harper from Colorado Rural Water. Well, I think we were given this very few days, or just a couple days ago, basically. Did not have any time to really review it very closely. But I can guarantee you, and am very willing to work with the board to come up with a good solution for the future to make sure that we're bringing you very accurate and very realistic recommendations.
Thanks, Steve.
I'd make the motion to deny.
Thanks, Alan.
I'll second.
Do we have any further discussion on this? All in favor to deny, Mr. Brad?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstaining? Motion carries to deny based on the policy that we have written. I'd like to just make a note that we will consider, or we will have discussions with our contractor to potentially mitigate some of the issues surrounding our policy in the future. And Brad, I just want to thank you for bringing this to our attention, because it does give us a good opportunity to discuss this lack of something that we have in our program. I'm sorry that we aren't able to do anything else at this time other than following our policy. But we do hope that you apply to take the test here in Colorado and continue to achieve operator status here in Colorado, and potentially you can check back with us at a later date to see if we've got some other options for reciprocity in the future.
Okay, thank you so much, and thanks for the board for listening to me.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
All right, moving on to agenda item number 6, guidance for implementation of the regulatory training requirements. Hello. Welcome.
All right, I'm Sherry Skajari. I work with City of Aurora, but I was on the stakeholder group meeting that talked about the mandatory regulatory training guidance development. Thank you for this opportunity. We appreciate it. Several stakeholders met twice and exchanged emails to develop what was presented to you today in this guidance. Just wanted to highlight a few, just 4 items, just to call your attention to those. First of all, we did create an acronym because it wouldn't be water if we didn't have an acronym, right? We did decide to call it an MRT. As you can tell, when you say mandatory regulatory training, it's kind of a mouthful. So MRT seemed nice and quick. The course length, we put in the guidance that the course length is 0.1 to 0.2 TUs. It was felt that that hour may not be quite long enough for all of the developed material that the group thought needed to go into the class. The division will develop the course content and then supply the slide deck to other instructors. And the guidance also says the board will ensure some type of free training is available online. It was felt that the industry needs to be able to recruit and retain operators, and this requirement should be free. There will be 2 tracks, one for water and distribution. Water treatment and distribution is one track, and then the other track would be your wastewater collections and industrial pretreatment. So it was felt that there was 2 distinct disciplines there, and that those mandatory, the MRTs, should be separate just because of trying to cover those 2 types of things in one class would be even more difficult than it's already going to be. So I think those are the highlights that we came up with. If you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those, or Nancy may have to help me. That's all I got.
I thought this was exceptional myself. I was really impressed with it.
Good. Glad you liked it.
Thank you for all the work. It wasn't easy to develop something like this. So appreciate all the effort that you and the committee has put into it.
Absolutely. Evelyn, I thought they were throwing things at me, or tomatoes were coming at. Evelyn helped from North Glen, helped me extensively as well. So I just wanted to mention her name as well.
Yeah, the concept behind the minimum regulatory training was that we could continue to go forth and upgrade and use the more recent ABC exams, but they were pulling the regulatory questions out. And so this was our way of providing that information and being able to continue and make progress with the exam. And I think as it's laid out, it's going to do the job that it's intended to do.
I do have a couple of clarification type questions. So the MRT is 0.1 or 0.2, so it's an hour or 2. What would, if someone is offering an 8-hour, an all-day course, would that part of that be considered an MRT, or I mean, how would that work?
Yeah, so the idea would be that whatever, you could use the 0.2 hours of that 8 as the MRT. And then the other 6 hours of that class would be whatever they are. If they're, supplemental, or maybe they're directly related to water treatment, you would still get the credits up, but they would just be separated. Just like now when you get a certificate, they separate them out into different sort of disciplines. It would still be the same, only it would be a total of 8 hours, and the 0.2 would go to the MRT.
Right.
Can I just add a bit?
Please.
So it might help if you think in the portal we keep or with regards to the portal, we talk about the mandatory regulatory requirement as a yes, no. So you either meet the requirement or you don't meet the requirement. And so a course that's approved to meet the mandatory regulatory requirement, regulatory training is a yes. And so if there's this slide deck or this content, then any course, no matter how long, that includes that content is a yes. But the course gets the number of training units for the length of time of the course. Does that help?
Yes, thank you. I have one other question, and it's a statement that says the board will ensure that MRT training is available online free of charge. What if someone wants to offer something free in person?
That's fine.
Okay, so maybe we should say modify. I don't know whether we need to modify the language. I don't want to get into
The
another
intention,
policy problem.
the intention of that statement. So the division is actually in the middle of an RFP process for the product will end up being each of these 2 online courses. So we would be able to put a link to each of these courses, each of these online courses on the web. And because of funding that the division has, we can put those online courses out there for operators, and there will be no charge. They just click on the link, they take the course, and they've met the requirement. If they take this online course, it's not part of a longer course, and so they will get the training unit specifically for meeting the regulatory training requirement. So in future years, the division's funding sources are not guaranteed. And I think the intent of that statement in the policy is to articulate the board's willingness to request its contractors support this free online training option if it's not able to be supported by the division. In other words, the cost of the associated costs, having the course on a server somewhere, the cost of maybe updating it when regulations change, any of those costs. If the division's not able to afford that, I think this is probably best expressed to you as a question. Does the board want to make the commitment that funds will be made available out of program fees should that be necessary? Is that a commitment the board would like to make? And I think that's what that statement is trying to get at. I don't think it excludes anyone else providing training free of charge. What it does is it articulates a commitment on the board's part that over time, this will continue not to be something that operators will need to pay for. And so that's a question, I think, and I'm glad that Sherry brought it up. And I'm glad that you asked clarifying questions.
So I can see some course providers taking this, putting it in with their course and charging for it. It doesn't, just if we say it'll be offered free, they can still charge to put it with their course, right?
They will.
But that's just mostly the slide deck that they can pull from, that they can put in their course. I guess they could have computers there and go, oh, here, go online and do this course while we're doing my course. Because the online one, you could just sit in your office.
There's been discussion about making sure that this option is available at conferences, whether it's in an in-person training or if there's literally a couple of laptops set aside where operators can go in and complete this as part of the conference.
So is the idea like before we had a whole list of courses certified for regulatory? I know that was to kind of bridge us to now. So now we're looking at just this will be the one course or 2 and everybody takes it and it's dictated by the state, or no?
The content is the same. So if as a instructor in Aurora, if I want to give a regulatory training class, I would have to apply through the TU thing and say, yes, I'm using the state slides in my presentation. And then it would be approved to do that. If that's what, yeah. So the content, the slides are all built because we wanted to ensure that the content was all the same, that I was saying the same thing that Nancy as an instructor was saying for this content. That doesn't mean you couldn't add in other information in your class.
Yeah, I think the only thing, well, not the only thing, but one thing that makes me nervous is that 0.1 or 0.2. I think we should say it's either 0.1 or 0.2 because I think people are going to be like, you got 0.1. I took, it's just going to be confusing. I think we should, I know it's a lot of material.
It will be approved through the training units process as a specific number of training units. The range allows for, let's say, right now it's a 90-minute course, but then there's just a bumper crop of new things coming down from EPA. And in order to alert operators throughout the state of regulatory changes, maybe for one particular year, that course will be 2 hours long in order to have enough time to cover the changes. So this course, we may have a specific online course that is approved for 2020, and maybe in 2022 there's been significant changes in the regulatory environment. This course now needs to be upgraded. It needs to be reflect what the current regulations are. The fact that operators need to take regulatory training every 3 years is intentional so that operators stay up to date. So perhaps the online course, right, for 2020 takes 90 minutes. It's identified as a 90-minute course, and it gets 0.15 training units. But maybe in 2022, because of lots of information that operators now need, that course is approved as a 0.2 course because it has more material. And maybe in 2027, it's back down to 0.1. So the range gives flexibility for future revisions of this course. But the course itself, the course content will be approved through CCWP and be given a specific number of training units. The policy gives flexibility, but the course will always be a specific amount of time.
But our requirements are for 0.1 of the regulatory training, right?
Yeah, it can't be any lower.
The interim policy says a minimum of. So it'll never be less? It'll never be less than an hour in length. This also says it will never be longer than 2 hours.
Yeah, I mean, I still go back to, I think it should just be an hour or 90 minutes every time, because what if you don't have to take it that year, but you have to take it the next year, and this is going to confuse people. I think if we said it's a 90-minute course or whatever we decide and leave it that.
One of the things to remember though is that they still get TUs for it. You still as an operator need your quantity of TUs. Yeah. So you're going to get that quantity of TUs to add into your other body of TUs. So you're not going to lose anything if you have a 2-hour class rather than a 1-hour class. You're just gaining an extra TU.
Armando, did you have something you wanted?
One thing to kind of keep in mind too is that the guidance is, all right.
I'll just stand so I don't stand here too long. Yes, anybody can read this guidance. Operators can look at this guidance and see what it is. But remember, the operator isn't under a requirement for a minimum number of MRT TUs. They're just under a requirement to take a class that meets these requirements. This guidance is primarily going to be used by CCWP in making decisions whether or not to approve an application for a course to meet this requirement. So at the end of the day, an operator is going to go through thinking, I need an MRT course, and they'll just look and see, okay, what courses are approved? Oh, this one looks good. Oh, look, this one's 0.1 TU. This one's 0.2 TUs. Oh, that's actually what I need. I'm going to take the 0.2 one. So they'll just have some options. In my best thinking about it, I'm not sure that it'll confuse them. It will kind of set up maybe a little competition about, who's providing the most bang for the buck, so to speak. The free course is going to be designed, the one at least we're contracting now, to be 90 minutes. Another thing to consider is, in some ways, that each approved course will be between 0.1 and 0.2 is really setting the target for the division to drive how much content it develops. Because, there in the stakeholder process, there's a lot of debate. I mean, this could be 16 hours of content, but we decided that was just no one wanted that. So we had to have a number so that as the division is putting that slide deck together, there's kind of a rough target in mind about when to say is enough is enough. So just there's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Yes, come on up.
Thank you. The ambiguity also scares me. I don't think necessarily on a course, maybe not on an operator side, they'll pick the course that is available to them and in close proximity, and they like the course description. I have confidence that the operators will have enough visibility of choices given the course catalog in the portal, and information from, their system as to what courses are going to be available in their area. From our programmatic standpoint, it's going to be tricky to evaluate every inbound course. And if the course providers really know when they're going to apply for the course consideration, that application happens before they've even delivered it once. And so if over the course of a couple occurrences, they decide, oh, well, this actually I should have applied for 2 hours, given the amount of content, that may be a little bit tricky in that first year to know how long they should have applied for in that course. If they come into it thinking, well, I thought this was just supposed to be a 1 hour course. I have the slide deck, they say 1 hour. If they apply at 1 hour and if they deliver it for 2, they can still only issue 1 hour of training units. That being said, conversely, if they apply for 2 hours of training units and so does another applicant for the exact same content, and they say 1 hour, how do we evaluate, if it's exactly the same and one system says 2 hours and one system says 1 hour? It could just be tricky on our part. I know that we will be able, once we get an adopted policy or procedure guidance, we will be able to create an evaluative process, but it weighs on me a little bit with not really knowing the minimum. I do know the minimum requirement, but I don't know if the course providers will.
I think, from what I've seen in doing some of them and seeing these are professional trainers. They know how long it takes to deliver the stuff. They know how to cut it back into their time that they have allotted. So I'm more worried about the confusion. Really what I'm worried about is the confusion of we've added it to people taking their first test. And so I want to make sure that they understand, here's what I got to do in order to take that first test and be able to find it, which it sounds like they will.
I had a couple of just specific comments. So thank you very much. We've worked before on regulations and policies before on the drinking water side, and we always just get great support from our stakeholders that are willing to contribute. And thanks now for contributing to this work on operator certification. So just a couple of very specific comments that probably do need a little bit of change. So on page 4, under Roman numeral 4, and then number 4, on the second line.
Where again, Ron?
So on page 3. I started off just wrong right from the start there. Page 3, under Roman numeral 4, and then item number 4.
Which is on page 4. Yeah.
Oh, then it did move? Oh, well,
I have it on
anyway,
page
I've got
3.
it as page 3 on my numbers.
I have all these weird
If it
spaces.
starts
Yeah.
out nowhere.
But that's exactly, yep, that's the right spot on the screen there.
Okay, there we go.
And it says, we're on the second line where it says between those 3 documents, and then in the parenthetical, there's more than 3 kinds of documents listed. So I would just propose changing the word 3 to those, to change the word 3 to types of. So just what it say, those types of documents, just a very minor change. And then down on number 8, in that same one, yep. So I would suggest adding the CDPHE incident reporting line in addition to what's listed there, just because things happen on the weekends and nights, and operators want to and need to get a hold of us.
At the compliance line?
Well, the compliance line is usually used in the daytime when folks are reporting maybe an E. coli positive or something like that. We often get calls to the incident reporting line when there's like, a Friday night pressure loss in, whether it be, oftentimes small towns, but that's just because there's more small towns than large towns. It happens in large towns too. And so that's really, I think would be really helpful. And then if you go to the next page under item 3 for the wastewater side, I'm sorry, I don't know if it's item 3 or, yes, it is under item 3, under 3D. Again, I would suggest adding the same thing, just adding that for example, CDPHE incident reporting line. And again, we do get those kind of spill reports often during non-work hours and weekends. So that's all. I mean, just a couple of just suggestions. I think this is really fabulous and very clear, and hopefully will be really useful.
I have some concern over, it's on page 1, under frequency. It states, therefore, a new regulatory course must be completed at least triennially. Regardless of timing, a completed regulatory course cannot be used twice for the same certificate. So what if we get into a situation that Nancy described? You have a course who has a number, but a lot has come down from the EPA and it is substantially changed, yet it's the same course number. I mean, are we going to not allow someone to take that course twice?
Oh, they can
Am I-
take
am
the
I
course
being too-
twice. They just can't meet the regulatory requirement for the same certificate using the same course during the life of the certificate. So this would be a situation, there's not there's nothing in the portal that stops you from renewing your certificate early. So if you've met all your training requirements, you can renew your certificate early. So let's say you took a regulatory training class towards the beginning of the life of your certificate. And then you're ready to renew it in less than 3 years. All it's saying is that you can't take the same course to renew
In that
your,
period.
correct.
There was my misunderstanding, because I thought as long as they're an operator and they continue to renew, then they couldn't take that same course. So
I think a renewed certificate would be not considered the exact same certificate. When you renew it, then it's a new certificate. Anyway.
That's the date on the
Yeah.
TU
All right.
certificate.
I didn't want to borrow any trouble.
I like it.
Well, I'd make a motion to approve with Ron's changes in there.
Can I make one quick comment before you vote?
Please.
I'm sorry. On the technicality side of this is if you were to submit a course in the portal for 1 hour, you fall, and the way the portal is designed, you have to have 20 minutes per topic to award any TUs to it. So if you have 4 topics in that 1 hour, the portal itself is going to tell you it's worth 0 TUs because no topic is long enough. My concern with the portal, or we'll have to make some changes to it, would be that if we've got 5 or 6 topics that is trying to be covered in this hour to 90 minutes time period, the portal itself is not going to allow this course to be submitted for approval because it doesn't have that 20-minute time frame per topic. We got more topics than time allowed, if that makes sense.
I think the overall topic would be that it's an MRT, and there's going to be different things going on in that class, but you're still doing all of those various listed items in that hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever that time frame is. So you're not going to call out, I'm going to talk about this for 20 minutes. I'm going to talk about that for 20 minutes. You're just calling out a complete MRT class as provided on the slide decks from the state is what I would input into the portal.
So it's just one topic,
It's basically-
regulatory,
Right.
Same matrix
covering the slide deck.
that the
Yeah.
board does is going to have to be redone because there is not a topic to submit that under in the portal at this point in time.
It does. Well,
And
it does have the Clean Water Act, and it has. I think that that's not going to be a difficult thing to resolve, Steve.
I'm just trying to bring out a few things that there's going to cause issues on the program side.
Another quick question. How long until the RFP is out? What time frame are you looking at?
The free online training, hopefully the free online training, if all goes according to plan, should be online and available beginning of fall, end of the summer. So the RFP is already out. We have 2 winners for the grants that we're putting out there. One grant will be going to do the electronic online free training for this requirement. The other one is a more classroom roadshow kind of approach to some targeted regulatory needs that the division identified. So.
So we've got a motion on the table to accept this guidance with modifications. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Do we have any other discussion, comments, clarifications, changes? Armando?
Can I add something? I just don't know when else to talk about this, so I'll share it right now. The online regulatory training contract that we're putting together that's going to do that to meet this requirement, that contract is also, as a separate item, is going to do some additional work to develop online free portal training specifically available for operators to learn and understand how to better use the portal. So we'll also be getting that in that same time frame. I think some of that's already available, right? Some of those tutorials. So we're going to be expanding kind of that portal training catalog also.
Your RFP, they're building 2 different MRTs?
Yes, one MRT for the wastewater track, one MRT for the drinking water track.
Sherry, can you describe a little of how you got to this from the stakeholder process? Like how many people were there, what your approach was, and how you ended up? This is a good list here, and I just want to know how you got there.
So the first meeting we talked about, how we would kind of structure it, and then went back and everybody submitted what their ideas would be for each of those tracks. And so we looked at those things through email. And then at the second meeting, we kind of honed them down a little bit to make sure that, what about this? What about that? There was a lot of discussion on how deep to go and how, because of the time limit, it's going to have to be fairly high level, but that high level stuff can be covered fairly easily and still be able to add in the new things, because there will be new things that we need to get the message out, and, storage tank rule or cross connection rule, those kinds of things that could be added in. So we just tried to touch on everything and yet not try not to leave anything out, but not get too deep into the weeds. There were a list of, I don't know, I could count how many, 10, 15 people that were active in the group. So, and I have that list if you guys want to, on record, I could read them, however you want to do that.
I was just wondering how you went about it, because you came up with a good product there. Yeah, I think the main, it is crazy to stuff all regulations in an hour. I think the idea was there's more than just what's on the ABC test that's specific to Colorado, and here's a taste of it. Now it's your job to learn what you need to know.
And
Well, I think Nancy asked an important question. Does the board want to ensure that this training is available online and free of charge?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I think I think how we could do that is partner with some of the bigger or even smaller facilities, because they want their people to have access to this regulatory stuff. And if they mostly have maybe we could work a partnership with some of the utilities to say, you host this, you support this, you print out a certificate.
And I think as a bigger utility, we wanted the ability to train our own people without having to, we probably will utilize the online stuff as well for a few people, because you know how that goes. But we want to be able to provide our own class, so that we will include this at 1 to 2 hour, all of those slides will be included, but that there could be other things that we want our operators to do and to know that we would include in our regulatory training class. So that was also important, that other people could take this training and utilize it, at conferences or in our own utilities, or, hey guys, we're having a class, come to Aurora. Come on down. We'll all get together and do this MRT training. So,
yeah.
Armando's coming up.
Uh-oh.
We need to give you your own microphone, buddy.
Right. One approach to that board ensuring is to just, be prepared to continually maintain the free courses that we're paying for development right now, which at the end of the day, the bulk of that, effort and cost and stuff is going to be done under this contract. But going forward, we can't maintain them for no effort either. There's always going to have to be somebody who at least administers them, does the steps of downloading completions and uploading them into the portal and that kind of stuff, paying for upgrades, ongoing server hosting, that kind of stuff. So it won't be a big burden, but it's not nothing. So just kind of keep that in mind, that would be a great way, just as long as if the need arises, can we pump some money into that from program fees or program resources?
Right. And I would just say, I think the division intends to continue our support of this, but we're not in control of our budget. And so, we can't, we couldn't, like in writing, say in something like this, the division will do this, because that kind of commitment just wouldn't be worth the paper it's written on, just because we don't have that control. But our intent is as budget and resources allow, which, appears solid for the near term anyway, that would be something that we would, be interested in supporting and doing, of course.
I guess then we would need to include a line item in our budget for this on an annual basis, not knowing what that is currently, right? But to keep that as a place marker somewhere.
So your budget is held by the contractors.
Right.
And we'll know more probably the next budget cycle around, because they'll have costs, so we could be able to plan for that. But I think it's something important since we're requiring this regulatory training, and that's what I've been hearing a lot of, is everybody, where do we get this regulatory training? I'm like, you might already have it. You need to go check. But especially for new operators that are new to the state, don't know where to get training or just becoming an operator, it would be nice to have it simple for them so they can get in there.
So Nancy's vision for how this all works out is that there's a link right next to the portal that says drinking water regulatory training, click here. Wastewater regulatory training, click here. And it's that easy for operators to find it.
On
And
our webpage, on the board's webpage.
oh yeah, the CCWP
Okay.
webpage. So where the operators are going to apply and they go, oh, I need to meet this requirement. Oh, here's the link how I can fulfill this requirement. You know, that's simple. And that is the course that will be, I think actually that online course is the one that's critical as far as the training units, the number of training units goes. And everyone who wants to use that same slide deck, you know, if that online course is 0.15 training units, then everybody who uses the slide deck for that course will be using 0.15. Now, their course might be much longer, operators might get many more training units, but the regulatory piece is going to be consistent throughout the state. And the training that operators get, the mandatory training, will be consistent for all operators.
Any further discussion?
The only thing I would just mention is you did have a public comment that was submitted. I think it was on the interim guidance, but we put it for your consideration as far as the final guidance was concerned.
Where the locates.
Yeah, the utility locator information.
Yeah, there was.
While not a bad idea, I think it deviates from the purpose of the regulatory training was to cover what was going to be excluded from the ABC testing.
Yeah, it's a whole different animal, the locate thing now. Another topic.
Yeah, I think it's important to acknowledge that we did receive that comment.
I'd also like to mention the stakeholder group was really, they spent quite a bit of time discussing other regulatory training because this is a very high level training that's going to be required of all operators. But there are many operators who need much more in-depth education concerning specific regulatory requirements. This in no way prohibits those courses from being submitted and being approved. They will not be approved to meet the regulatory training requirement, but they will certainly be approvable for training units and course providers that want to provide more in-depth training on regulations will certainly be able to do this. This doesn't prohibit it. It just means that even though they're regulatory courses, they're not going to meet the regulatory training requirement, but they will certainly be appropriate, relevant topics for operators to study, and they can get training units for it. I'm done. I'll stop talking now.
Okay, we've got a motion to approve with amendments and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries to approve the guidance with amendments by Ron. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 7, Division Liaison Report. Nancy.
Good morning. You received a memo from me with regards to enforcement orders that have been taking place. Since I wrote this memo and it was included in packets, I actually received another notification about another wastewater facility, Elegant Hills Parks and Estates LLC, who has been operating without a certified treatment operator since February of this year. I also wanted to let you know that with regards to the enforcements that that I identified in May, Farmers Corner has hired a new operator and they're back in compliance. The other one, Bulk Water Runner, the division is working with the facility owners. That one hasn't come back into compliance yet, but the division's working with the owner to see that that happens. So if you have any questions about any of these facilities or the enforcement orders, I'll be happy to answer them. Okay, moving right along. I wanted to talk to you and give a little bit of a briefing with regards to the portal. And I'm not going to steal any thunder from your contractors because they're on the front lines of dealing with how the portal is going. But what I wanted to do, I wanted to talk about so the portal went live for operators to submit applications at the beginning of this month. And this has been an extremely productive month, not in terms of the number of applications that have been approved, but in discovering bugs, discovering user error, so places where instruction really needs to be written and provided to the people that are using the portal, bugs in mapping, so some of the training units weren't mapped correctly. And so finding all of those things, I consider to be extremely productive because they are getting fixed. User error, not so much, but I think I actually shouldn't say that. I don't know how many of you know Sydney Rebner. Sydney has gone above and beyond the call of duty, and I really want the board to know and recognize that she has spent hours and hours making sure the portal works for her as a course provider. And then on top of that, she has made videos. So some of the instructions that we have been needing, some of the, she hasn't just written down, do this, do this, do this, but she actually has created some training videos to walk people through how to get through the portal. So 3 of those videos are actually posted on the portal website right now. And we're looking into the ability to put links actually inside the portal rather than having to come out of the portal to look at the videos. We actually want the link to be on the appropriate page in the portal. And we're working with the developers to try to have that available. Sydney's working on some additional training videos. So I just want to make sure that you guys are aware. So that's going to help user error, we think. It won't make user error ever go away, but it should help a great deal. One issue came up not too long ago where apparently there was a misunderstanding between the developers and me, I guess. Those of us on the Colorado side of the contract. With regards to the visibility of data. So if you recall when the portal was demonstrated, I don't know how many of you saw the reviewer side, but the reviewer, when an operator or an applicant submits their application, the reviewer can see everything they submitted. And that's, all their profile data. Well, apparently that profile data is only available when an application has been submitted. So one of the things that we discovered this month is that if an operator is having difficulty with their application, the folks in the CCWP office can't necessarily track and see what they're seeing because the application hasn't been submitted yet. I have run into situations where my counterparts from other states have sent me questionnaires for Colorado operators who have moved and are seeking reciprocity in another state. Generally, there'll be a questionnaire that comes my way that asks, things like, is this operator in good standing? Did they get their certificate by reciprocity or did they take an exam? If they took an exam, what were their exam scores? And I discovered that I didn't have any way to look that up in the portal. So we've been talking to the developers, to Launch IT, and their perspective is that this wasn't in the base product. So ABC's product doesn't have this ability to view the data except in an application scenario. and that it would take some effort on their part to develop some kind of a report or something so that we can view that data. That would be a change order. And they're suggesting that that will not cost, it will cost under $10,000 to provide that accessibility or the visibility of the data outside of an application. So that's one potential fix. The division has some skilled database technicians who may be able to provide a workaround solution to provide the kind of data that we're looking for. And I think that we're very open to having the division do so rather than authorizing a change order and having to pay Launch IT extra. But if that's not going to work out for us, I would like at least a head nod on your part to go ahead and get that additional functionality for the contractors and for the division. The funds, my understanding is that the division would probably have the funds to be able to pay for that particular change order.
And not the program?
The program's been hit already with their contract with Megan Baker for preparing the course catalog data for migration. And perhaps the program didn't receive as much money in the first place, due to some of the database activities that belong to OCPO and the cost of those activities. So the feeling is that certainly if there are program fees, they would be much easier for the program to pay for this. But if that's going to put the new contractors in any kind of a financial stress, the division would be willing to take this on. So one option is there's no cost and we get the information we need utilizing our database folks. If that's not going to work out, then this could be taken care of either by CRWA or by the division. And I don't know that unless you're authorizing an expenditure of program fees, I don't know that you have to approve this, as go ahead and let's do this. But at the same time, this portal is yours and we're not going to make any kind of a decision without your being able to weigh in. I mean, you may say, we don't need that, let's not do it at all, in which case, that's your decision to make. But I wanted you to at least have an opportunity to weigh in on this, to know what's going on. And so this is sort of a briefing, but like I said, if it doesn't work out for the division to access this data, would we get your head nod to go ahead and work with Launch IT to get this functionality?
Nancy, does this data exist electronically
Yes.
someplace else? Or are we going to go dig through OCPO's paper files?
So it's a matter of having ongoing data. So we have OCPO's old database, which we have access to. But as we move forward, that's kind of locked in a particular day and time when that was the most accurate data. As we're using the portal is the new database for holding operator data. And we don't have that data someplace else. We're not collecting that data in a paper format. We're only collecting it in the portal.
I personally believe that.
What requests are we getting?
Oh, I don't get a lot of requests for reciprocity. It's not a big volume. And I'm not sure, Larissa, can you speak to whether there's an alternative way for you to see into operators' accounts I know that there was, that Megan suggested a workaround for that. So it might not be a big deal.
So some software was recommended to us that allows us to screen share with operators and course providers and portal users. It is not as invasive and it's not going to require a ton of downloading or space on the portal user's part. It's secure, and it was recommended highly by Megan Baker from ABC. And it's a product that is affordable, and it's going to allow us to see information that otherwise we would not be able to do unless we enter the portal as the operator or as the course provider. We're in a situation right now where we're doing that frequently. We're asking permission from course providers and from operators to use their credentials, and that is not safe. That's not a best practice, and that's not something that we'd like to see as an ongoing way of doing business. Right now, there's a necessity because things are still under development and streamlining, and there's a lot of frustration on the user's part, and we're able to troubleshoot a lot better when we can see what they see. A much safer and less invasive way of doing that is by maybe at least trying and piloting this software that would allow us to screen share and maintain the integrity and safety of the operators and course providers' personal accounts, because they're personal. They hold, at least the operators, it holds some of their own information as like a person, as a human. So I don't like what we're having to do, but it's been a need for us. And I think this would serve as a nice way to avoid that moving forward.
I would think if the division can work that out and get it done, then I would give the nod to go to the operators or go to the contractors and see what it would cost at that time. If there is a cost, if the division can get it done, let's go that way, and then we'll move back into it. You surely are going to find out more by the time we meet again in August to see where this is all headed. You've got to have some leeway here to get things moving here. Our budget, I believe, was hit pretty hard, and that's my personal opinion. And we need to conserve what we have and how things are going, so this program can stay without bringing costs up to the
Agreed.
operators. Okay.
Yeah, I agree. However, we can make the systems that we put in place work better for those of you who utilize them. Let's move forward with that.
Thank you. I didn't have anything else. If you don't have any questions for me, I will go back to my.
I had one thing. Last month we talked about getting testing location for PSI, and you were going to check and see if they had a list or somehow we could, because people are always asking where are these centers, and I know they change and it's their business, not ours, but you were going to see if there was a link to a list of the testing centers. Did you ever find anything on that?
I did. I put a link on the program webpage.
Okay, good.
I put a link to the PSI Colorado Candidates Handbook, and I also put a link to their PSI. It's actually a national map. So what they have on their webpage, you can pull up Colorado and see all of the sites in Colorado, but you could pull up Nevada, you could pull up Nebraska, you could pull up Wyoming, you could do Utah, whatever state you want to, you can look up. So it's not just the Colorado sites, but you can see any of their sites in the country. And when I initially was looking at that, it wasn't working properly, and I contacted Megan Baker at ABC because ABC has that partnership with PSI, and PSI got that page working correctly. So as to the best of my understanding, it's there and it's accessible.
Good. Thanks for doing it.
Sure.
Also, please pass along our thanks to Sydney for working through that TU stuff. We really appreciate everybody's help with that, especially hers.
Yes.
Moving on to agenda item number 8, contractor update.
So this is Steve. I can talk a little bit about the budget that you find there. So what I've done is taken the original spreadsheet with the budget that we submitted March for the 10 months of the year. So those are the numbers that are on the far left-hand side. The next column is the actual expenses and the income that we have realized since we have taken the program. And then the very last column on the right is your percentage to budget that we've used for this 10-month budget. So if we were completely on budget, we would be at 30% because we're the 3/10 of the way through this. As you can see, in which we realized that the income would be low, but that as the portal now is open and moving forward, that is growing rapidly and will only get better. But on the same aspect, on the expense side of things, we are actually under budget on quite a few items. Of course, the big one that's kind of skewing this is the consulting fees to ABC, where we committed $15,000 to that. We are yet to see a bill from ABC for those consulting fees, but my understanding is that we are getting fairly close to that number. We're not at it yet, but we're getting fairly close. We'll have it in the next month or so, supposedly, with talking to Megan. But that's kind of a financial overview. The balance of the bank account as of Thursday of last week was $216,000 and change. Now, from that, we still have the 47 plus thousand for the last two payments, launch IT, and what's on the budget here. But that's the only thing at this point that I'm aware of. So financially, we are not in a bad position in any way as far as I'm concerned. I think we're only going to get better and the program become even financially stronger. I can answer any questions if anybody has specific questions on the budget.
I had a couple questions. The Colorado Treasurer's certificate fee, is that the $5 fee per license?
That is a $5 fee per certificate issued, and that's done at the beginning of the year. So that'll be a one lump sum at the beginning of next year.
Okay, thanks. And the ABC membership dues, I would assume that's at the beginning of the year too?
I think that's actually towards the end of this year. So my understanding is those were paid right before we took over. So yes, that's a once a year fee.
Okay. And the IT services, we're getting close to the tail end of that. Are we going to be okay there?
Yes, we are. And the reason being is we took a little hit from our IT people in the beginning for our setup on our side at the CRWA office. And now our monthly recurring fee from them is less than what we budgeted. So we should come out fine. It was all a one big 1 month hit that kind of skewed that number.
Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for the questions.
I just want to express my gratitude in having this information available. What a change in the way that we are able to kind of keep track of the program and really visualize what is going on. So thank you very much.
You're most welcome, and I can provide this monthly if you'd like. I mean, we can do it quarterly as we've had. You just have to tell us what you'd like, and we're happy to provide the information for you.
Steve, would you like to talk a little bit about Light Edge?
Yes. Thank you. We will see one other item that's going to go up on here, and that's the hosting, maintenance, and offsite backup. The original contract with Light Edge that was signed right before we took this over was approximately $450 per month for space on their server to host the portal, as well as their offsite backup every night. The first week, I'm not sure, remember exactly which day, that we launched the portal live after June 3rd, their server went down because we had exceeded our storage limit on their server. So we had to increase their space that they were allocating us from 100 gigabytes to the recommendation from Launch IT was to go to 500 gigabytes. So by increasing our contract with them for the space that we have allocated, and again, coincides with the backup, that will add approximately $280 per month to our contract for Light Edge for the hosting and maintenance and offsite backup. That is the one number you'll see growing faster than the budgeted number that we had available. But we do have enough space now that we should never get into this problem again.
Thanks. I think we're good with quarterly updates on the financials. I'm getting head nods around the room. So appreciate it. Anything else, guys?
I would like to introduce Vanessa Roy. We have been talking about her for the past few months, but I had not had a chance to be able to bring her up here to introduce her to you and you to her. She is our program assistant, and she has stepped up and just learned so much so quickly. And she's such a pleasure to work with, and she's very, very valuable to both the course providers and especially the operators. I don't know if any of you have had a chance to work with her, but I really would like her to get just a little couple minutes to introduce herself so you could get to know her.
Hello, everyone. I come from a very strong background of customer service, and I actually come from banking, but my heart has always been customer service. A little bit about me. I was raised in church and worked green rooms, special events. I have the heart of a server. So now to be able to be in a position where I'm strictly helping operators is the best thing ever. I've already been able to make friends with some of my operators. I've had them email me pictures of their dogs so we could kind of just have a happy focal point in our office. And it's very important to me that they feel comfortable and confident calling us. And even though we may not know all of the answers, that they can trust we're going to find the answers, whether it's trial and error on our part or just doing further research. I've been with the program for about 2 months now, but it feels like I've been here forever. I have a wonderful leader who is always open to me if I have questions or kind of need that reality check that I'm not Superwoman and I can't do everything for everybody, but I definitely try to do as much as I can. We kind of joke around that she has to kick us out of the office because we love what we do. We hate to have to go to lunch. We hate to have to go home at the end of the day. We really enjoy being able to make sure this portal is functioning at its best capacity for our operators.
Great. Thank you. Welcome. And we appreciate your service to the program.
And what a change it has been.
2 things left. In your packets was a quarterly report of program activity. This is shorter than I would imagine for the future because we had limited information to provide. The foundation of the report is based off of Nancy's annual report from last year. We looked at the information that she needed to collect for her report and tried to model our quarterly reports off of some of the needs that she's going to have on an annual basis. We figured it would probably be good to have that parallel structure for reporting. However, in this month, we weren't able to provide some information as we didn't process any exams, or no operators took exams during this 3-month period, nor did we accept any new applications for reciprocity. So in the future, you'll see a little bit more detailed information regarding those two program, the things we do within the program that just weren't available during this first quarter. Definitely open to any suggestions about more information that you'd like to see. And not just the board, but also Nancy, if there's more that we can collect on a regular basis to make just the picture more clear, we'd be happy to do that.
Have we had any operators take tests yet at PSI?
Yes.
Yeah. I guess at some point I'd like to see the breakout, if you could, like where they're testing, if it's mostly Denver, mostly Grand Junction, mostly Pueblo. I mean, wouldn't be something every quarter, but maybe.
Thank you. Yes, we can do that.
Would you normally have access to that information?
Brandy.
Okay.
And so does Steve. They can look that up on that side of the other portal. We don't have access to that information though,
Okay.
but we can get it.
And could we reach out to these operators that just took the test and see how their experience was and what their wait time was like to get into the testing center, and
Yes.
just kind of the timeline? Okay, so it's pretty quick. Yeah.
I don't want to go back and take a test just to see how it works, but not enough to actually take a test.
You're a glutton for punishment.
Well, maybe I will then. Maybe I'll.
Put out those statistics, huh?
So information by testing location is something you're interested in here?
Yeah, I'm just interested. It would help us target, outreach efforts and where the operators are. I imagine it'll mostly be Denver metro area, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. So I was just
Yes.
curious to know.
Make that happen. Does anybody have any questions about the quarterly report from your packet that we can answer?
Well, since we're not used to getting any information at all, this is a breath of fresh air.
Thank you. If you think of something that maybe you'd like to see, and if you would be willing to just share it with Brandy, we'd be happy to include it in our next report. Since the information for your packet, when that was due, we've had some additional information that maybe I like to share, and just some questions to ask of the board. We have, but last month we talked a little bit about the strategic plan and vision, not just the document, but the actual actions that the board was going to take. And after talking a little bit with, the staff, and then some of the needs and some of the specifically from the course providers, one thing that I would like to suggest to add to that is to maybe take another look at the TU matrix. Some feedback that we've received from course providers and that we've seen is that there's some topics that are not on the TU matrix that are really relevant and necessary, and that we think may be really beneficial to add. One we just talked about this morning with the changing policies with the regulatory acronym that I can't remember right now. That's currently not on the TU matrix, but in order for it to be calculated moving forward, we need to have that TU matrix updated so that it can be adopted in the portal, and so that when course providers go in to submit their applications, the things that they want to add to their topics are actually available to them. Some other things that I guess it was always kind of a given, maybe. I don't know. I wasn't around in the previous process, but like math. If you teach a module in a training section on mathematical, like the concepts or even practice, that's not, the math itself is not on the matrix. Perhaps the content or the topic, there are topics on there that have math embedded in them. But if you're strictly teaching a course on practicing the math skills, that's not a topic on the TU matrix at this time. So I guess what I'm asking is just to maybe consider in the not too long, but give it a little bit of time, then maybe you'd be willing to take some recommendations from some subject matter experts, and even the program can work on maybe collecting some information as well that could benefit our course providers and our operators to have in the TU matrix. One other thing is, in months past, we asked for some consideration for some late fee refunds due to circumstances beyond an operator's, like it's not their fault. When we submitted our information for the board packet, at that time we didn't have any requests, but today I have a few to bring before you, and they all have the same reason. And we recommend refunding them because it was situations outside of their control, which is why they were issued a late fee. And the reason why I'm bringing it up now is because I don't think we're meeting again until August. Is that correct? And I feel bad having some people wait a whole quarter to hear about whether they're refunded or not. Should I share the names? Or, okay.
I would explain who they are and what
Sure.
the circumstances are.
And how many there are?
Sure. So 1, 2, 3. There's 9 operators at this time who are requesting a reimbursement of late fees. And the biggest reason right now that people are getting late fees is because they're not able to work with the portal. Maybe they waited too long, but still the thing is the way it's built now, that if you submit before it expires, you should be able to push your information through. There's been some bugs. We knew it. We knew that when the portal went live, there were going to be some things we needed to still fix. But every one of these operators was in the situation that they hit a bug. It's not that they waited too late and tried to apply after. It's that they tried to apply before their the date of their expiration and were either held up or unable to submit an application. Those operators are, and I'm sorry, I'm terrible with butchering names, Ronald Schulier, Sherry is one of them. This is a little anecdotal. Like, I just got to say, if I were Sherry, I probably would have reached through the phone to scratch out like somebody's eyes. And she was so kind, just incredibly, she was so warm and welcoming. We visited her system and she was so supportive of our program right there in front of us, to the operators. And she's been so helpful to people hands-on with her own system, just being supportive not only of them, but of our program. And it's people like that that make this possible. It's people who are sitting at systems who have faith in our program and that want to see it succeed. And they're everywhere. It's not just the Sherrys and the Sydneys. Like, we have advocates everywhere. And I didn't know how it was going to be coming into this. And I've been so pleasantly surprised. One of the people, course provider, who's been willing to let us she was our guinea pig, and it was Joanne Vold, and she has been wonderful to work with. And we have learned so much because she was willing to let us practice on her. And those opportunities, I feel like it had to almost be her, because she knew what it was like before. And she's like, we all like her so much. So just side note. But Sherry, thank you. Edward Trujillo, Keith Benbow, David Goff, Jerry Gonzalez, Corey Sickler, Jeff Ross, and Phil Morse are all the operators who have fallen subject to the portal, and it's just been within the last couple weeks.
Did the bug get worked out, whatever it was?
We're in the process of fixing them. Unfortunately, it was not just one bug that affected all of them. It was a few things. There's fewer today than there were last week, and even fewer than 2 weeks ago. We have people working really hard behind the scenes to address the issues that have come up, and it's still not perfect, but we're working and we're learning, and there's a lot of really understanding people out there that have made our lives a lot easier than I anticipated.
How much is the late fee?
Pardon me?
How much is the late fee?
It's $50 per operator.
I was so surprised at how much late fees you've taken in.
So that late fee is the application fee plus the $50. So really, it's just
much less.
So I would recommend, if my opinion was solicited, that these are all valid reasons for refunds of late fees. And we anticipate there will be fewer in the future.
I'd make that motion.
Thanks, Alan. Thank
I'll
you.
second it. Or Shelley?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. We will refund these late fees for these 9 individuals. Would it
Names and operator IDs to you.
Would it be beneficial to perhaps give our contractor some leeway in the next 3 to 6 months to automatically refund or use at their discretion refunds of late fees based on bugs in the system? Correct.
Based on system errors, if there's a system error, you guys could refund automatically or at your discretion. It's not really an operator's control.
Yeah. I would feel good about moving forward in that regard just because this is a new system, and I feel that the better we can serve our operators and the more lenient we can be in those regards, the better reputation we'll have. So this is totally self-serving.
Do you feel comfortable having that ability, having that decision on your shoulders?
I wouldn't put that on my my staff members to make that decision, because ultimately, I'd like to be able to take responsibility if it was if something should happen. With tricky cases, I ask still that if we would be able to bring them before the board on pretty straightforward cases. I would feel comfortable doing that with consulting Steve and the program staff, just that we kind of all know what's going on and we're all aware of the situation. I don't want to make any calls outside of just issues with the system. But yes.
Would that be included in your quarterly reports?
Monthly, yes.
Okay.
Well, I'd make that motion then. I would say for 3 months, and then we can readdress it there for refunding late fees for program issues, and then any kind of other extenuating circumstances, whatever odd things come up, you could bring before us as well.
Thanks. Can we get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
I think you were in favor, correct? All right. Motion carries. Thank you for your help.
I have one last item. And I think it's just a matter of getting a little bit of your feedback on an operator situation. So we had an operator who took an exam in 2015 and passed. That operator in the last month is trying to finish that application. In the previous procedures, that an operator could take an exam, and if he or she was successful, then they provided other information, paid the additional certificate fee, and then were issued the certificate. This operator didn't ever complete that process, yet passed an exam. Math says that that certificate would already be expired and would be in restoration if the operator would have finished it up. I don't know what Regulation 100 looked like back then or even before this current version, but it seemed pretty straightforward to us in the program that that probably was not a valid certificate, as it was never actually issued. But we didn't feel comfortable making that decision, as it's not clearly defined in Regulation 100 right now.
Did they go through a time warp or
Yeah.
they say what happened?
Amnesia.
He's got to start at square one again, I think. It would have expired, and has he had any experience or gotten any TUs in that time?
We
Probably
didn't-
not if he didn't have
We
a
didn't ask those
certificate.
questions.
Yeah.
So he or she passed the test, but then they just didn't get the certificate.
That's right. They passed the exam but didn't complete the application process to be issued a certificate.
Now, I thought there was a time frame
3
when they
years.
could do that, and that's 3 years. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Is he or she still within that time frame of the 3 years? Oh, my math is fuzzy.
Yeah.
No.
And I would say that it's pretty clear cut. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. We can take any questions now if you have any.
What kind of calls, what's your biggest call you're getting there? What's the biggest issue people have? Is it not knowing how to work the portal, or is it, that's it?
Yes, people not knowing how to do the things that they want to do in the portal.
Actually, I have a question going back to the fellow that somehow reason decided to wait 4 years. Isn't there an exception if he was in military training? I think there's an exception. So if he was in the military during that time, doesn't he get a little more leeway? So have we determined whether he was or was not in the military?
He didn't mention his service.
Yeah, I think if he never got a certificate, doesn't matter if he's in the military. I think that allows for service, and then they can come back. But
Yeah, now it's in a policy. But yeah, that applies once you have a certificate to be able to renew it. Yeah.
That's education for us, though. That's a good point. Good.
Time. You're right.
it's a hot tub time machine. You just got in.
Vanessa, do you have anything to add?
Comment kind of to a comment that was made on the board about some of these fixes or little bugs that we're working out. I just wanted you guys to know, still 2 to 3 times a week doing morning update calls with ABC, Launch IT, the division, Nancy, and the program to make sure that we are working through these bugs as quickly and efficiently as possible. We're not letting them wait a week or something and turning notes in. We're also keeping a spreadsheet on the Google Drive that everybody can access. And anytime there's a problem, we log it, and everybody can see it the minute it's logged. So we're trying our best to, as quickly and efficiently as possible, work through these bugs that are out there. And my hat's off not only to our team at the CCWP, Larissa, Vanessa, and Paula, but we've gotten amazing help from Nancy, Armando, Mike Beck has even been involved helping us in the division. Together as a team, we're going to get through this, and it's getting better every day, but there's still these challenges. And we appreciate your faith in us and in the job that we're doing. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Steve, is one of the ongoing issues, the particular browser you're using?
That is a huge issue. Right now, only browser we're able to get it to work in is Google Chrome. And so those people that have an Apple phone, or even a Samsung phone with Android, an iPad, anything that's not actually running Chrome, they're not functioning correctly. That's been something we've talked about many times in our calls, but there's still no resolution to that. So yes, that is a big issue.
That's weird because my coworker, he says he can't get it to work on his computer, but it does work on his phone.
Well, maybe it's getting better.
I don't know. This is the first I've heard of it, so I'm gonna.
Yeah, maybe it's I was just sharing with Brandy that I had a similar issue with a portal that I was dealing with, and I didn't realize, that I was using two different browsers even. So maybe, maybe he's using Safari on his phone, but, Chrome on his computer.
And you said it's Chrome that does work, i.e., there's problems with.
So what we've experienced is any other browser than Google Chrome will do nothing. When they try to log into the portal, it just sits there. It doesn't even let them sign in. And unfortunately, there are some businesses where either IT doesn't trust Chrome, so they won't install it on the work computers, and the operators don't have a home computer, so they're kind of stuck in water. Another issue we've run into is that operators don't know what web browser they're using. They aren't tech savvy to say, okay, I'm using Firefox, I'm using IE. They just say, well, I go on my work computer and do whatever it has on there.
So did you post a little blurb on the webpage?
Yes, it would be useful to have it actually on the portal main site. We're talking with our developers to get that visible there. And they've also told us that this isn't a long-term thing. They want to work to where it's more browser agnostic and we can open it elsewhere. Just right now, Chrome's the way to go. And that's all we have to add unless you have questions.
Any other questions? Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Agenda item number 9. Annette, do you have anything for us?
I don't have anything today.
Wonderful. Well, I suppose we'll move on to number 10 unless somebody else has something.
I have 2 quick things for you. First, this is Lance's last meeting with us, and he's on the phone, so we can't give him a hug. Goodbye.
And we had all these gifts here for him too. And now I guess
I know he missed out.
We've got cupcakes sitting here.
Yep, I guess we'll have to eat all the cake ourselves.
Well, thank you, Lance.
Yeah, we really appreciate you being part of our team, and we're sad to see you go, and hope you're utilizing your time wisely.
Yeah, thank you. It's been fun. It's been definitely a learning experience.
How long were you on here, Lance? 8 years?
No, I was just the 4 years.
4 years? We'll miss you. Makes it sound like you're dying or something. I'll probably see you around, but we'll miss you on the board.
Yeah, I may show up to a meeting or two.
Excellent.
And then with Lance departing, you might have noticed your new member, Josh Meck. So his appointment took effect immediately, so that's why he was able to participate today. Eric was reappointed to the board, so he gets to serve a full 4-year term now. And then our other newest member, Sela Rethamel, is here. She's observing today, but she's not able to participate until our next scheduled meeting, which unfortunately for her is in August since we're skipping July, but she wanted to be here today to see, what we do and the kind of the process of a meeting. So you will see her in August.
Welcome to you.
Welcome.
You're welcome.
Yes. Appreciate your service.
Josh, can you give us a little background? You said you're from Boulder, or you work at Boulder?
Yeah, I do. I've been over at Boulder for roughly 10 years, in the industry, almost 20.
Water or wastewater?
Water, wastewater, storm. I've been kind of around it all. Started at a really small city. Just kind of worked my way up the chain.
Cool.
And what seat does Josh fulfill for us?
He replaced Chris Harris's position, which is a person with interests in the water or wastewater industry with geographical representation.
Very nice. It's interesting to note that this board is comprised of various industry professionals, and we all fulfill a specific role on the board. And it's always neat to see who fulfills what.
So Sela was appointed to replace Lance's position, which is the water collection or water distribution operator at the highest level in Colorado.
Excellent.
And are you employed by a municipality?
You might have to hit the button there.
Yeah, so I'm the wastewater superintendent for the city of Westminster. So I have my collections for and my distribution for, because I also oversee our reclaim system. So while that was when Reg 100 was kind of, does reclaim get distribution or collection? I said, oh, I'm just going to do my distribution, not even worry about it. As it turns out, it's distribution. So
good deal.
Carpooling? Okay. As I drove down and was really, really late, I was like, I wonder if any of these are my fellow board members. So
We'll look forward to seeing you in 2 months.
Welcome,
I
John.
have increased my travel time, so I won't be late. An hour apparently was not enough.
Yeah, but you never know.
I know, 270, I thought, oh, this is going to be a piece of cake. And then 270 was completely stopped because somebody was doing something on the bridge. So, okay.
Okay.
I need a few backup routes to come around, but yeah, so.
Yeah, if you come down Colorado, you see that giant building. You're like, I'm almost there. And then it's like another half hour before you actually get
Well, and then I got really excited, so I turned early, and I was like, now I have to go all the
Oh,
way
yeah.
to Cherry Creek and come back. So I was like, okay, hour and a half. I won't be late next time.
All right. With that, we are right on time. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. We'll see you guys in 2 months.
Thank you.
And this may not.
Thank you. See ya.
And they're gonna reinstitute single family homes.
Getting busy.
Into it again. Have you heard that? Do you know?
Yeah.
I mean, that we're gonna, that every.
So I'll tell you what I know, we did the regulation, in 2014, the stakeholder work